Coming into 2024, what are the expectations you have for yourself?
Third and 29. Jones steps up, tries to avoid it, buys some time. Jones uncorks, deep ball, touchdown on the ricochet. Purdy back to throw, pressure coming, steps away, looking to run, and he walks it in for the touchdown. Throw on 4th and 18. He's given time. He wants Jefferson. Jacobs with running room right up the middle. Jacobs is on his way. The Raiders are going to win this game. Lays it up. It is intercepted. Trayvon Diggs. Guess who? To McCaffrey right up the middle, and a stiff arm. McCaffrey for
6. Super Sunday is 4 days away. I mean, I'll tell you guys, it is going to be a great Sunday for Super Bowl. The 49ers and Chiefs, both teams that are positioned to win, both teams with great quarterbacks, great receivers. Isaiah and Ben, how you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here back on the program. I know that I've been kind of MIA all week, just other stuff going on, but I'm glad to be here on the show. Good to see you, Laura. Good to see you, Isaiah. Looking forward to a good Super Bowl. I know we'll obviously I'll talk a little bit in terms of the championship games. So I haven't gotten the chance to talk with you guys about that prior throughout the show. But, two teams that obviously it's a rematch of 2020. That one was down in Miami, and this one's over in Vegas. So it should be a really good one, and looking forward to it for sure.
Isaiah, I mean, how you doing? I know, sorry, I've been missing in action these last few weeks because I got really busy with work and all that, and sometimes I get really tired from not doing the show and all that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, we've missed you too the last several weeks. I know myself, I haven't before yesterday. I didn't do a show for a couple of weeks because I was out of the country. But, it's great to be back, great to be in the swing of things. I know I was telling James last night, I had to do a show because I was literally chomping at the bit. I mean, I got so desperate to do a podcast when I was on the airplane because I had a lot of stuff I really wanted to get off my chest that I nearly went live on my flight back from Hong Kong and was going to do a show on the airplane, but sadly there wasn't any signal there. But, I can't wait. It's going to be a great Super Bowl, like you mentioned, Ben. We got the Niners. We got the Chiefs. This is a rematch of Super Bowl 54, one of the most painful memories of my life. And I can't wait for, hopefully the Niners get revenge. And, we got Purdy versus Mahomes. We got Shanahan versus Reed. We got the Chiefs wearing the red uniforms, the Niners wearing the white uniforms, which is what they both wore the last time these two teams matched up in the Super Bowl. So it will definitely be like deja vu from the previous Super Bowl. And I really cannot wait for this game. And I can't wait to see, what happens on Sunday night because it's going to be an electric game. And what a year, man. First it started off with Ben, your Celtics, having a great run. Your Celtics made the finals a couple of years ago, and then my Niners are now in the Super Bowl, and then hopefully maybe Loro, your Dodgers will go to the World Series. I mean, we've all this great stuff has happened while we've been all on this network. So it's definitely been
Last year for
great.
me, national champs.
Exactly. Last year for you, national champ. So we've all been like in the championship at one point in time. So hopefully, Loro, maybe the Lakers will go to the finals maybe this year, who knows, or the Dodgers will go to the World Series. We'll see. But yeah, what a great year, and looking forward to a great Super Bowl.
Absolutely. But before we get into all that, I want to start with the coaching carousel. I want to start with the Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh. I felt like the Chargers had to make a big splash in their head coaching hire just because they're in a big market like LA. I felt like that you got to credit the Spanos family for bringing Jim Harbaugh here. And I cannot wait to see him work with Justin Herbert next year because the AFC West is going to be crazy next year with Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Antonio Pierce. So, anyways, Isaiah, what are your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh coming back to the National Football League?
I freaking love it, fellas. I love this move so much. Jim Harbaugh, this was the perfect place for him, and this was the perfect coach for the Chargers. The Chargers needed a superstar coach, especially after what they had in Brandon Staley. It was obvious from the get-go that he was not the guy to begin with. And this Chargers team is so talented. I mean, you have Justin Herbert at quarterback, Keenan Allen, a receiver, Austin Eckler, Quentin Johnston, Mike Williams, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James on the defensive side. Like, with a good coach, I really believe that the Chargers last year would have made it to at least the divisional round of the playoffs. Like, that's how talented that this team is. So with Jim Harbaugh there and with his no-nonsense approach, with the culture that he's going to set, I really think that this Chargers team now can go par for par with Kansas City in the AFC West and really challenge a lot of these teams in the AFC and potentially get to the Super Bowl. And for Jim Harbaugh, like, he has a chance now to potentially be like Pete Carroll and win not just the national championship, but win a Super Bowl as well, because this Chargers team is so loaded that they have to get to a Super Bowl with this much talent on the roster. And I think they're going to have like the 7th overall pick. So they potentially could get Brock Bowers as well to add to that offense, which would make them even more lethal. So it's a great hire for the Chargers. And I think that for Jim Harbaugh, it's a great move for him as well.
And you think Justin Herbert's going to thrive in his offense?
I do. I think he will because, with J.J. McCarthy, Michigan shifted more to a pass-happy attack recently, and that really benefits Justin Herbert because he's got a great arm and he thrives in a pass-happy offense. So I really think that that's going to help him a lot.
And then you talk about Greg Roman is going to be the offensive coordinator. I like this move because Greg Roman knows how to simplify an offense. And I think that it's going to be a good mix of pass and run. And Greg Roman loves to run the football. And I think Greg Roman reuniting with Jim Harbaugh is a good thing.
That's the only problem for me with this hire of Jim Harbaugh is with Greg Roman, because Greg Roman is used to coaching run-heavy offenses, and you have Justin Herbert, man. Like, you can't put in a run-heavy attack with Justin Herbert. So I really hope that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman and all the offensive staff decide to put a offense that is heavy in passing, because you have Justin Herbert, one of the top passing quarterbacks in the NFL. It would be foolish for the Chargers to go run heavy with a quarterback in Justin Herbert. That's like having Peyton Manning and you decide to run the football with Joseph Adai like 45 times. Like, you just don't do that when it comes to these quarterbacks. So that's the only issue that I have is I just hope with Greg Roman, just let Justin Herbert be Justin Herbert and just throw the football like 45, 50 times down the field.
Do you think it'll be it'll be Roman that calls plays offensively, or do you think that's going to be Jim Harbaugh?
I think it's going to be Jim Harbaugh, because Jim Harbaugh is the quarterback guru. He's the guy that I know he didn't call plays in his final years in Michigan, but I think that it will be Jim Harbaugh because he loves to talk to like the quarterbacks on the sidelines, and he's really good in terms of offensive innovation. So I really hope that it's him because if it's Roman, then I'm kind of uneasy with it because Roman is really known for running a run heavy attack, and you just don't do that with a quarterback like Justin Herbert.
I think it's going to be Jim Harbaugh as is going to be the one calling plays for the Chargers offense. I mean, Ben, obviously Jim Harbaugh came off a national championship at Michigan. Now he's going to be leading the Chargers. How excited are you about seeing Jim Harbaugh work with Justin Herbert?
Well, I do think the Charger fans finally have a sigh of relief that they finally got something right. Because I feel like forever they've been such a cursed franchise of things going wrong year after year after year, and they had this guy in Brandon Staley that, I mean, year after year, I just felt for Charger fans. Like they, he essentially, man, just put them in the worst position possible, and you were really like limiting Justin Herbert. Like Justin Herbert's essentially, personally in my mind, a top 10 quarterback. He's probably in like the back 7 to 10, but like his ceiling is an all-time high. If you bring a guy in like Jim Harbaugh, they got a slam dunk out of this. I love this hire. I did predict Bill Belichick to go to the Chargers, but if it wasn't Bill Belichick, this was the guy I really wanted the Chargers to get because I do think that they're going to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. I do think the Chiefs are going to be at the top until proven otherwise. But I love this hire for the Chargers. I really do. I do think that Greg Roman, I think, is going to be more of like calling the plays, but I think that Harbaugh is going to be kind of like helping him out at the same time because I feel like, two guys essentially that have not worked yet together kind of have to see that meshing first. And if they could just get it worked all together, I can really see it happen. And in terms of Austin Eckler, I think he's a free agent. But I would not be surprised if Saquon Barkley joins with the Chargers. I think they'll be a perfect fit. You have Herbert with Barkley, and then you have some of the other guys around there. Then you're really, giving a team like the Chiefs or a team like Denver, who I feel like Denver has some pieces to make things work out, a run for their money. So yeah, I love this hire for the Chargers for sure, and I hope they do well. I really do.
Anyways, guys, with that being said, here now. We are going to talk about the next head coaching hire. We got to talk about Antonio Pierce, staying in the AFC West. Mark Davis didn't fumble this time, guys. Quick thoughts on Antonio Pierce getting the injury tag removed. I'll start with you, Isaiah.
I'm not surprised because the players loved him. They played hard for him. He's a high energy coach. The only thing that I think the Chargers or the Raiders screwed up with, and me and James talked about this on our show last night, is the hiring of Luke Getsy. Because you go from a guy potentially getting Cliff Kingsbury, who runs a heavy, high octane passing attack, heavy pass happy attack. And you go to a guy in Luke Getsy who is known for throwing screen passes. Like, come on, man. Like, really? You're going to – like, this dude –
Look, here's the differences. Cliff Kingsbury runs more of an air raid type offense.
Yes, and that's what the Raiders needed. I feel like they needed an air raid style offense. They don't need a guy in Luke Getsy who is like a slow, conservative, screen pass happy offensive approach. The Bear fans didn't like him. I mean, they wanted him out of town because they felt like he was the reason why Justin Fields struggled a lot in Chicago, and now he's going to be tasked with developing the quarterback there. And I heard that Hugh Jackson also interviewed for a spot on the staff. Marvin Lewis is the assistant head coach, which I don't mind that. I don't mind that move because he's not going to be the guy calling the timeouts and everything. That's fine, but when you have Luke Getsy and Hugh Jackson potentially running your offensive side, look at the Raiders now. Jim Harbaugh's in that division. Andy Reid's in that division. Sean Payton's in that division. You're going to have some of the great offensive plays and great offenses in that division. And for the Raiders, their offense is going to be led by Luke Getsy and Hugh Jackson. That's like you're talking about gold, and then you have a pile of crap. That's what it is. Like I just don't understand that hire of Luke Getsy by Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce, I love the hire. He's keeping Patrick Graham. That's fine. He's going to create a great culture. Defense is going to be great. The offense is what's going to kill them. If the Antonio Pierce hire doesn't work out, because we all know Hugh Jackson. I mean, he's a terrible offensive coach. Luke Getsy. I mean, the guy got run out of Chicago by Bears fans and hated by Bears fans. So I think that those are the two hires that I just it boggles my mind why Antonio Pierce made that hire.
And then Ben, I'll ask you, what are your thoughts on Antonio Pierce as the full-time head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, like Isaiah was mentioning, not surprised. Obviously after Farm McDaniel's been part of the season last year, it just sounded like players are bought in a lot better. You saw them after games when they won smoking cigars in the locker room. So just the whole vibe is different. And, remember Devontae Adams against the Lions, when we actually had a watch party in that game, he was just ripping on them. It looked like he wanted to get out of there. And then, 180 happened. They bring that guy Antonio Pierce, and culture completely, switched. So I think that's a really good thing for the Raiders. Remember, guys, the Raiders went to Arrowhead on Christmas Day, and Antonio Pierce went head to toe with Andy Reid, and the Raiders won that game. That felt like kind of a game where you felt like, well, the Chiefs are going to actually do anything. And of course, they're back in the Super Bowl. But yeah, no, give credit to the Raiders there. They obviously got the head coach right. Like I mentioned with Isaiah, that you mentioned with Luke Getsy. Yeah, there's a lot of baggage in that one. Cliff Kingsbury, obviously, I thought he's going to be a decent one for them. But given a guy like Bill O'Brien, at least kind of something a little better than Getsy. I mean, goodness gracious. But there was some, hirings in this carousel to me that were just like, my goodness, like, and I get it, like it's going to obviously happen, but there are some that are just eye popping. Guys like Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, some other guys that just did not make, a roster, a coaching staff at all. Then you see guys like Luke Getsy. I mean, what are we doing here? Well,
Hugh
I like it
Jackson
for the Raiders.
Anyways, we're going to I'm going to start with you, Ben, on this one. I mean, the Patriots stayed in-house to choose Gerard Mayo to be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. I mean, Ben, I watched Gerard Mayo play for the Patriots. He was a heart of that defense when he played, and now joined Bill Belichick's staff to be coaching our linebackers. He did a great job in that area. I mean, he is a guy that is full of energy, full of life, and I am very, very excited about the future of New England football. And I think it's in a really good hands with Gerard Mayo, because Gerard Mayo is very smart. He knows his football, and I really think that New England Patriot fans are going to rejoice. They are going to fill out Gillette Stadium again under his leadership, Ben, and I am beyond excited to have Gerard Mayo be the head coach of the New England Patriots. I know you're very excited, and he's already done a great job filling out our coaching staff, doing a mix of the people that he worked with last year under Belichick, and then hiring people that are new. It's going to be more of a traditional staff than what Belichick had. And Ben, I mean, I can go on and on and on how excited I am about Gerard Mayo as the new head coach of the New England Patriots. I've been eager to ask you this. How excited are you about Gerard Mayo as the new head coach of the New England Patriots?
Yeah, I'm obviously really pleased. It's obviously somebody that played in the organization before. He has a lot of great leadership qualities. You guys have to remember too, is after Bill Belichick was kind of still in the last couple of years on his deal over in New England, they were essentially projecting Mayo to be coaching that team for the long term. And I think to me that pretty much answered head coach. And he got his opportunity. And as Isaiah was mentioning a couple times off the air, and whether it was in group chats or just to me in general, is the Patriots have to kind of go to now the new modern era of football. And Gerard Mayo brought in some younger coaches. Yes, they brought in the offensive coordinator from the Browns, Alex
Van Pelt.
Alex Van Pelt, yep. And he's kind of older, People are actually telling me he kind of looks like Freddie Kitchens, which he kind of does in a way. But you look at the Browns' offense. I mean, the Browns' offense, for the most part, the last couple of years, had a pretty decent attack. I mean, they did a decent amount of motion. I remember they run a decent amount. Obviously, with the Patriots, these obviously a lot of their run with Ramondre Stevenson. But they were under Van Pelt with the Browns guys last year. They were number 3 in the league in trick plays. So essentially, that means to me that they're going to kind of change a lot of formations. They're going to do a lot of things. And the Patriots are number 3, I believe, in cap space. They have a ton of cap space to make things happen. And Jerome Mayo said this offseason, Laura, that they're going to spend a lot of money. Knock on wood for that to obviously happen. But this is obviously what the Patriots had to do. They had to obviously define their head coach, then they get their offensive coordinator, then also get some help with the offensive coordinator. And they got somebody with familiarity with the offensive coordinator. They found a GM specifically, reportedly today, who was from University of Miami. Who
are you talking about Elliott Wolf?
No, well, they got Elliott Wolf apparently back for the director of personnel, but they also
Elliott
brought in
Wolf.
a guy.
I speak very highly of Elliott Wolf. I really think he really knows talent, and I really think that he's going to do a great job with running our front office.
Right. But they also brought in a guy from University of Miami today, apparently, as well, to kind of overlook a lot of the stuff, I think, specifically in their GM department. And they have not had a GM specifically in a long time. So I feel like Jerome Mayo, not only he's essentially doing what he's supposed to do, but he's trying to get as much help possible as a younger coach. And that's what you have to do with your new rebuild. You have to at least start to kind of get some new faces and just new philosophies, because they don't really have a lot of the guys from the Bill Belichick coaching tree now. And it's kind of like, if you're going to start off new, just make it all new, And I obviously love Bill and Josh and Bill O'Brien and guys from the past, but kind of a new slate is maybe something that this Patriots team needs. Not a lot of, familiar faces from the past. I believe guys like Matt Slater are probably going to retire, Devin McCourty, Brady, Edelman, as great as it was. Now we're essentially kind of past that slate of their kind of the dynasty tenure, and we're kind of looking forward. And then, it's kind of frustrating and, it's kind of obviously unknown, but I do think that so far the unknown seems pretty promising. So I'm really excited for it.
I just wanted to ask you, I mean, now that Jerome Mayo is now as head coach, do you think he starts Mac Jones, or do you think he's going to move in a different direction at quarterback?
Yeah, I've supported Mac Jones. I've been obviously remember a couple of years ago when draft happened. I was hoping for him. I still think Mac Jones can become a decent quarterback, but I don't think that he is going to be with the Patriots long term. I think that ship has kind of sailed. Unfortunately, I think that our coaching kind of broke him specifically. There was reports throughout the season that apparently he was talking with some other teams when the Patriots ever were playing. Not a lot of Patriot players were talking with him in the locker room. It just kind of felt like, I think at this point in time, he needs a fresh start. And that's sometimes what some guys need. They just kind of need a fresh start. I'd be curious to kind of see maybe if the Vikings take a look potentially at a guy like Mac Jones, or a team like Washington take a look at a guy like Mac Jones. A couple of guys that need potentially some young quarterbacks potentially. Mac Jones, I think, personally to me, is not a starting type quarterback material. I think at best he's probably a backup at this point in time. But I do think right now, in my book, if the Patriots don't get a quarterback at number 3, they're going to go probably either via trade route, or they're going to go maybe for a 1-year stoppage with a guy like a Baker Mayfield or Gardner Minshew. As painful as for me to look at, and then draft at 3 maybe Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously a generational potential receiver for long years to come, or they draft a tackle, which is my worst case scenario. I do not want that to happen, but that's just kind of essentially where I think.
Look, Ben, here's my theory. I think they're going to get a quarterback at 3. I like Marvin Harrison Jr., but I also think that with my selection, I am very high on Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. Yeah. And I would love to see him in New England. I think that this will be Jerome Mayo's quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously talking about the other situations because you got to obviously prepare for it. Because a lot of the times when we essentially kind of predict things with our specific teams in the drafts, I would say 50% of the time we potentially could be wrong. And then it's like, now what? So that's essentially kind of what I'm looking at in terms of like, okay, if they don't go for quarterback, then essentially what are you at? Because right now the Bears, to me, so obviously we'll talk about the Washington in a little bit, but obviously Washington got Cliff Kingsbury, who is essentially the offensive coordinator at USC with Caleb Williams. Cliff Kingsbury. So I mean, connect the dots right there. It pretty much to me tells me that the Patriots are going to get Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or either trade back Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt. Those are essentially all the guys right there to me. But I have to take a look at one quarterback that could be shaken up a lot because I know there's usually one NFL player, guys. I remember a couple years ago, AJ Brown was obviously the guy we talked about. That was kind of the big time move in this NFL draft. To me, the player to watch out for in this offseason's NFL draft, guys, is Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields in this NFL draft will be traded. So watch that.
Anyways, as I'll ask you, how excited are you about a new start in New England, especially getting a former player like Gerard Mayo to lead the New England Patriots?
Well, if you had asked me like 3 weeks ago what I thought of it, I would have probably told you like I didn't like the hire because you're basically running the Belichick's way without Bill Belichick because I thought they were keeping the same staff and everything. And I said like, what the Patriots needed is they needed a new philosophy on how to run things. Like they need a new philosophy in the front office. They need a new philosophy on offense. Defense, they probably could have kept that same philosophy because their defense was so damn good last season. But the offense needed a new change. The front office, they needed to move into the modern day era. And you know what? I got to give Gerard Mayo a lot of credit. He has really proven me wrong. The hiring of Alex Van Pelt. I mean, I love that hire because you're going to be running like that Shanahan style offense that, most of the teams in the NFL are now going to be running. And the Patriots are actually having a competent offensive coordinator that can get the best out of quarterbacks. I mean, Alex Van Pelt took Joe Flacco last year off the streets and really did a great job and turned back the clock with Joe Flacco, and he turned Joe Flacco into one of the most effective quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that really springs hope with either whoever the Patriots draft or Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones, whomever it is, that you get a guy that can finally develop the quarterback position. And I really like what the Patriots are doing now in the front office because, like Gerard Mayo said, we're going to spend money. When did they ever say that under Belichick? I mean, they never said that they were going to spend money under Belichick. It was always about
one thing really quick, a couple of years. So they did kind of go a couple of years ago with that little shopping spree. I believe in 2021, they got Jonnu Smith, and then the day after, I remember this vividly, they got Hunter Henry. So they did kind of do that because they kind of sucked out, they believe, the year before. Then they had a fallen year of a decent amount of cash space. They went for it. It didn't work out. And then the last couple of years, they kind of backed off of it. But now you have this here. It's like you're almost kind of going from a couple of years ago, but it's almost just like you have a lot. Now's the time.
Yeah, and I'm glad the Patriots are doing that because I think what the Patriots are lacking is like, if you had put Tom Brady in his prime in that offense last year, I don't think the Patriots would have been that successful because the weapons weren't that great. I mean, the offensive line wasn't that great. I don't think anybody could have succeeded with the Patriots offense and the weapons and the offensive line. So New England, they need to spend money. They have to spend money. They have to bolster the weaponry at receiver, tight end. Definitely got to get some better offensive linemen. That's why I think, you guys were talking about the draft. If I'm New England, I would go get Marvin Harrison Jr. because it doesn't matter what quarterback you get. If you throw in like a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels with the weapon and you don't improve the weapons, they're not going to be successful. So I think the Patriots, they have to start by really improving the skill position talent because you look at the teams in the Super Bowl, all of these teams, Kansas City and San Francisco, and even you look at the teams in the conference championship, all these four teams, they really had some really good skill position talent. So it really starts there if you really want to build a team.
Anyways, Ben, now we're going to talk about the Commanders now. Dan Quinn is now going to get a head coaching job again. I think that he learned his lesson in Atlanta. I think he's going to do a great job turning around that Washington defense that was ranked last. Then you talk about Cliff Kingsbury coming in as offensive coordinator. He's going to kind of run an air raid system there. Isaiah, what do you think of the move of Dan Quinn and also bringing in Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator?
I thought it was kind of like a meh hire because I thought that Ben Johnson was going to be the head coach in Washington, but he apparently, when the Commanders front office was flying in to meet with him
Yeah.
again, he canceled on them and he basically told them, "No, I'm staying in Detroit," when they were in the air. So I think that really caught them off guard. Listen, I think Dan Quinn's all right. Like, I don't think he's like a really great coach. He's a great defensive mind. Don't get me wrong, but and I told James this last night on the show. When Dan Quinn when he calls the defense is really, really damn good. But when he doesn't call the defense and he lets another defensive coordinator calls the plays, the defense struggles. Like, he did that in Atlanta. When Atlanta's defense was so bad, it was because the defensive coordinator was calling the defense. But when Dan Quinn finally took over defensive play calling, the defense actually was not that bad, and they were, outstanding towards the end. But it was too little, too late to save his tenure there. And then you look at Dallas, what he did there, and then we get the news a couple days ago that Dan Quinn is going to be handing off play calling duties to defensive coordinator Joe Witt. Like, I think that Dan Quinn, he should be the one calling the defense because he's a really good defensive mind, and I think he would do a great job with that defense. Cliff Kingsbury, I like that hire just because Washington, they're probably going to get Caleb Williams with them hiring Cliff Kingsbury, him running that pass-happy attack. It just suits Caleb Williams very well, and I think that that's leaning towards that direction.
So are you saying, Isaiah, that you think Dan Quinn is going to call the defense for Washington?
No, he's already said that Joe Witt's going to call the defense, and I think that's a bad move because when the coordinators have called it for Dan Quinn, they've always struggled. But when Dan Quinn has called the defense has always been stalled under Dan Quinn. So I think that's a really bad decision by Dan Quinn. I think Dan Quinn honestly should call the plays on defense, not let the coordinator call it. But we'll see what happens.
What about you, Ben? What are your thoughts on Dan Quinn as the new head coach of the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the hire was kind of rushed in a way. Was it awful? No. Was it great? No. I agree with Isaiah. I do like the Cliff Kingsbury hiring for whoever comes in, presumably probably going to be Caleb Williams, just a matter of that overall connection. But, drafts are crazy. Time will tell in terms of what happens there. But, yeah, Dan Quinn, I think specifically, is a good defensive mind. But if he's trying to kind of balance both out, I don't see it. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to see Bill Belichick there. I think that could have been a very interesting fit if they didn't go get Ben Johnson, which I think was going to be my number one fit for them. So they just kind of were looking at different hires at that point in time, and they found out that Dan Quinn was out there. So it was just like, all right, we'll just give it to you and finish out the cycle. And guys, let me ask you guys this: if you told me that Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick don't have jobs coming into this season, but Dan Quinn has one over those two, what would you tell me?
I would have called you crazy, honestly.
Exactly. So you're talking about this carousel, and just like there's just some guys you take a look at and just like, man. And we'll talk about Belichick. I do think there are potentially some reasons why he doesn't have as much as I love Bill in terms of why he doesn't have a coaching, hire under him at this point in time. But still, obviously, really shocking, the fact that that's the case. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel with Laura. It's just kind of a meh hire, like Isaiah mentioned. But I do like the Kingsbury hire for Washington, and it's a massive loss for the Raiders.
Next, we talk about the Carolina Panthers. They hired an offensive-minded head coach in Dave Canales. He has been a guy that has had a good track record with reclamation projects, and I really think he's going to get the best out of Bryce Young. And I am very confident that Dave Tepper is going to be very patient with Dave. What are your thoughts on Dave Canales as the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers?
You know what? I like this move a lot because he's a great quarterback guru. He's a great quarterback developer, and he's what Bryce Young needs. And the thing with him, and he mentioned this in his press conference, he builds his offense around what his quarterback does well. And I think that is what a great coach really does. He did great stuff with Baker Mayfield, turning around Baker Mayfield's career. I think he's going to do a great job with Bryce Young and turn around his career. So I think that it's a great hire for them. It will be a great hire if David Tepper doesn't meddle in what Dave Canales and Dan Morgan, the new GM, does. Because if he does, then all bets are off. But if he doesn't and just stays out of it, like the Niners did with Jed York, then I think that he will be a great hire. I think he'll have like a lot of success there in Carolina, but obviously it will take some time. But I think Bryce Young will kind of have like a Jared Goff season number 2, where he completely turned it around under a coaching staff that was dedicated towards his development. So I think he has a lot of good success coming his way.
I mean, you're right about that, because I feel like Carolina is going to be going for it this offseason. I feel like that this offense is going to be a lot better. I hoped it worked out with Frank Reich, but at the same time, Dave Tepper just was very impatient with him, because he dropped an F-bomb after the Titans game, and he threw a plastic cup at a fan.
Well, he gave him a 6-year contract. So if he does fire him like after year 2, he's going to have to pay another coach like a lot of money and for so many years. So I think this forces him to stay patient for sure.
He's not really patient. Did you have any thoughts on him saying an F-bomb against Tennessee, and then he threw a cup at a fan?
This reminds me of, like, I forgot what owner it was. It was like a Chiefs game, and the Chiefs fan was being very just yelling and screaming, and the owner threw like a cup of water at him. I forgot who it was, but it was like a couple years ago. But yeah, it reminds me of that. It was very funny, to be honest.
Ben, what are your thoughts on Dave Canales as the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, I absolutely love this move. The Panthers, to me, they had 2 steps this offseason that they had to figure out. One, a quarterback whisperer for Bryce Young, and 2, they need to get a number 1 receiver for Bryce Young. So one of the 2 has been completed. You looked at what C.J. Stroud did his first year with the Texans, and they had a young head coach with them as DeMeco Ryans. They got to get the same thing for Bryce Young. And I did think that Frank Reich, he's been with quarterbacks in the past, but something to me at this point in time, in this kind of modern era now of football, is you're seeing younger quarterbacks work better with younger coaches. And I just something about that where if you're going to start young in both situations. Unless you are like essentially a long-term offensive kind of guy, specifically like mine, that's been there, kind of done that with younger quarterbacks. But yeah, I like this a lot. I really do. And to me, guys, I think that they're going to take a look at T. Higgins in the offseason and Mike Evans, kind of 2 guys, big bodies. I probably think more lean towards Evans if I think T. Higgins is probably going to tag as much as I would love the Patriots to get him. But I just don't see Cincinnati, leaving. I don't see Higgins leaving Cincinnati.
If T. Higgins leaves Cincinnati, I think he's going to be a Jaguar, because I want to see him reunite with Trevor Lawrence. Right, Isaiah?
Yeah, I could see that, but I wouldn't be opposed to Kansas City. I would not be surprised if because they still need a number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes. I know that obviously Travis Kelce's kind of been a safety blanket, and but if they got a number 1 receiver, I mean, just you look at how more dynamic, kind of like what they have with Tyreek Hill. Now you essentially can get at somebody as your number 1 that kind of brings guys like Rashee Rice, who's obviously been blossoming into a pretty good number 1 receiver for them at least this point in time. Not like a top number 1, but kind of number 1 for what they have right now. You can kind of slide down in terms of the depth chart if you bring a guy like T. Higgins in. But I don't see the Bengals, letting T. Higgins out the door during this offseason. But I do think that Mike Evans in Carolina would be a really good move for Bryce Young. So I do like the Canales hire for sure, Lauro. And Hope it works out for them.
Then we talk about Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris is now going to get a crack at being the full-time head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He took over for Dan Quinn as interim head coach. You know what? Raheem Morris has learned his lesson. I mean, he had a bad roster in Tampa. His tenure there did not go well. But I'll tell you, Ben, I think he is going to do a great job in Atlanta, and I think that he's going to have a better roster to work with.
Yeah, the thing with Atlanta is they've just been one of the most inconsistent last couple of year teams of just mediocrity. Like they've been 7-9 like the last 3-4 years. The NFC South to me right now, guys, is not the best division. So in terms of the Falcons, they just are a couple pieces away from. Remember last year too. The Falcons legitimately had a chance in Week 18 to potentially clinch the NFC South if teams like the Saints and teams like the Buccaneers didn't do their job, because that's how mediocre that division essentially was. So the Falcons essentially just need a new voice. I thought Bill Belichick, after the second interview, essentially speaking, the Falcons interviewed Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh. They essentially interviewed guys left and right. And Raheem Morris, I think, was a solid hire for them. I didn't think that he was going to be the guy that they got. But, I think it's decent for them. I think that their defense is doing okay last year. Jesse Bates was massive to their defense last year. So they'll have to take a look at their quarterback situation. And that's why a guy like Justin Fields, like I mentioned, he would be a perfect guy there. Obviously, he played down south at Georgia for a couple of years in college. And I just think that in terms of their playmakers, they have playmakers there. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, B. John Robinson, obviously was blossoming in his first year. But they need that playmaker. That quarterback, and they need that play caller. Arthur Smith, of course, was awful there last year. Pray to Steeler fans for Kenny Pickett's progression, and I don't think it's year 2, year 3. Because, it was awful for them there. I don't think Desmond Ritter's the answer there, and for sure Taylor Heineke isn't. So they had to take a look at their quarterback situation, but in terms of the coach, I think they got the coach right.
Isaiah, what are your thoughts on Raheem Morris getting another crack at a head coaching gig, especially at Atlanta? I think he's learned his lesson.
I think he has, but I don't like it because I think Atlanta should have went after a guy that would have made a bigger splash like Bill Belichick or and I think I predicted this on one of our shows when we were talking about the offseason. I think they should have went after Kirby Smart. They needed a guy that would provide energy and, really install a winning culture and be a guy that the fans would want to come out to see. I think that's what they should have, gotten. But I just don't – I feel like they only hired him because Belichick said no and other people said no. That's why they went with Raheem Morris. I think they should have went with an offensive coach like a Ben Johnson or someone else because their offense, they need a guy that can develop the quarterback. And that's what, they need because like Ben mentioned, Desmond Ritter's not the guy. Taylor Heineke's definitely not the guy. So they need a guy. They're going to probably draft someone or get someone in the free agency. So they need someone that can develop the quarterback, and Raheem Morris doesn't do that.
Watch out for Gardner Minshew. To potentially maybe because Atlanta just feels like if they don't draft, they can maybe potentially draft the quarterback and bridge one. And they have the playmakers there. It's just they have awful quarterback plays the last couple of years, and they have not had the guy to call the plays right.
Anyways, guys, we talk about the Tennessee Titans on who they chose as their new head coach. They went with Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator. He now brings in his dad, Bill Callahan, to be in charge of the offensive line. I think Tennessee made a good move. I think it's going to benefit Will Levis. I think Brian Callahan is going to use Will Levis like how he used Joe Burrow. What are your thoughts, Isaiah?
This is one of the hires that I really like because this is what
go ahead, Isaiah. What were you saying about why you like the Brian Callahan hire?
I like it because they needed a guy that can come in and develop the quarterback and help put an offense around Will Levis. I think this is a great hire. Zach Taylor, young coach, helped develop Joe Burrow and used a lot of the concepts that made Joe Burrow successful. And I think Brian Callahan's going to do a lot of what he did in Cincinnati with Will Levis. And Will Levis is kind of like Joe Burrow in a way that they, are both really good at pocket passing. And that's what really fits Brian Callahan's offense. So I think he's going to be successful. I like what he did bringing in his dad, Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. So that's a great hire because they shore up the offensive line. And then I really like the veteran coaches that they brought in at the coordinator spot.
What about you, Ben? What do you think of this hire? Do you think this is going to make Will Levis good? But do you also think that Derrick Henry is going to thrive in that offense?
Well, I don't think Derrick Henry's going back to them. But besides the fact, I do think for sure it'll help Will Levis. I thought that he did a lot of great things last year for that Titans team. Obviously, the Titans didn't really have a great year last year, but I think that he was a bright spot. And they obviously needed to bring a guy in with either some veteran experience like Callahan or kind of a younger coach to kind of help blossom, his overall play. And, like Isaiah mentioned, this was a really good hire, I think, for the Titans. And we'll have to see specific. I think the Titans are kind of in that rebuilding, phase. They have to get a little bit faster. I mean, they kind of lost their two pillar playmakers the last couple of years. Obviously, Henry's going to be gone. You got A.J. Brown gone the last couple of years. So, they got to kind of find that specific next guy from Will Levis. But I really like the coaching hire for them for sure.
And what about you, Isaiah? I mean, I already asked Isaiah this. Now, we talked about the last head coach hire. The Seahawks went young, and I feel like that Geno Smith will no longer be the starter because I think Mike McDonald is going to get his own quarterback. Isaiah, are you a fan of that move for the Seattle Sea Chickens?
I hate the Seahawks like, you and Ben hate the Jets. But I got to applaud them for making this hire because this is a really good hire for them. They needed a coach to help fix their defense. Their offense wasn't a problem. Their offense could score a lot of points. It was their defense which kept them from making the playoffs the last several years and being a championship contender. Their defense was just so horrific the last several years. And, Mike McDonald, his defenses have been one of the best in the NFL for the last 2 years. He can coach defense, and he's a really good defensive mind. And the one of the things about this hire that makes me nervous about my Niners going forward is that Mike McDonald has owned Kyle Shanahan in his career, and now he's going to be in the same division, running the Seahawks offense, running the Seahawks defense. We'll see him 2 times a year. I'm kind of nervous about that. But yeah, it's a great hire for Seattle. And I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle is in contention for the NFC West either next year or the year after, because they do have some great pieces on defense for McDonald to work with and on offense as well.
What about you, Ben? Do you really think that this is a good hire for the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think Mina Kimes on ESPN, she was a Seahawks. She had this stat that really stood out to me in terms of the Mike McDonald defenses this year against top tier offenses. They were just incredible. You look at the Chiefs, the defense against the Chiefs, they only gave up 17 points. Just a lot of teams that's why the Ravens were so good this year, because their defense was so stellar under McDonald. And the Seahawks obviously kind of need that specifically to kind of bring, I'm not saying the Legion of Boom defense kind of feel back, but just they've always kind of felt like with that environment in Seattle, just their defense was kind of their strong suit. And I think that McDonald, will help them for sure. So I like that a lot for the Seahawks.
Next up, now we are going to talk about the AFC and NFC title game recaps real quick. My thoughts on the Ravens-Chiefs game, I thought Baltimore was going to win, but, I felt like Baltimore's offense played their worst football at the wrong time. Their defense really kept them at the game. Kansas City just got lucky. That's all I can say. And as for the Niners, what a comeback. The Lions' future is so bright, and I really think that the Detroit Lions are going to be a future Super Bowl contender. I mean, I think this is something that they'll learn from, and I really think that Dan Campbell is probably the reason why they made it all the way to this point, and I think that the Lions are going to be a great team down the line, and Dan Campbell is a great coach, and I think that this is a really good Lions team that we're going to see for many years to come. What about you, Isaiah?
Okay, so as far as the AFC Championship is concerned, number one, we witnessed the stupidest game plan in playoff history by by a coaching staff that we have ever seen in the NFL. I mean, I don't understand what Todd Monken and John Harbaugh were doing. Kansas City, fellas, I looked this up yesterday. They're ranked 26 in the NFL in run defense. Baltimore is primarily a run-heavy team. How do you run the ball 8 times the entire game? It was like Baltimore purposely threw that game. Like I don't know what they were doing. Like they went away with what worked and they did their weakness against the Chiefs. Like it made absolute no sense whatsoever that they would put that type of game plan. If John Harbaugh, I'm John Harbaugh, and I saw Todd Monken's game plan on Friday before the title game, and I saw that's what it was, I would have tossed that in the trash. I mean, that was an awful game plan. How can you only run the football 8 times against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL? It made no sense whatsoever. And then Baltimore, not to mention, they choked by Zay Flowers with the fumble at the half-yard line, Lamar Jackson with the interception in the end zone. Kansas City did not play well whatsoever. But the reason why Baltimore lost is because Baltimore just shot themselves in the foot. Just a horrific game plan, a bad fumble at the goal line, the interception by Lamar. I mean, they should have won that game, but they just gave that game to Kansas City. And then the Niner game, fellas, you guys have known me for a long time and how much I've made those comparisons between Brock Purdy and Tom Brady. That was a Tom Brady-esque comeback right there. I mean, by Brock Purdy. I mean, that second half, Brock Purdy etched his name in history with that comeback. The defense got their act together and played really good. But I really think that the Niners got lucky in this game, and Dan Campbell gave the Niners this game. Because when you're down 27-24 and you got the ball on the San Francisco 35-yard line or 30-yard line, whatever it was, and you're in field goal territory and it's 4th and 3, take the points, Dan Campbell. Like me, Ben, and others were saying this in the group chat. Like, what are you doing not kicking the field goal there? I think that Dan Campbell and John Harbaugh both cost their team the game, and that's why we're sitting here with Niners Chiefs in the Super Bowl instead of potentially Ravens and Detroit. But yeah, I mean, it was a great AFC and NFC championship, great comeback by the Niners. And how about that Brandon Ayuk catch, man? That was the catch of the decade. I mean, for the ball to be it should have been picked off, number one. It bounces off the guy's face mask into the air for for Ayuk to get it. I mean, that really turned the game around for the Niners.
What about you? Ben? What are your thoughts on whatchamacallit on both title games?
So I'll start with the Chiefs-Ravens game. I thought that the Chiefs had a really good game plan offensively in the first half. They're just marching it downfield the first couple of drives. Kelsey and Mahomes, obviously, they passed Brady and Gronk in terms of all-time postseason touchdown. Congrats to them. I give them all my respect and regards. Ravens had no answer for them in the first half. But the Ravens, obviously, they responded. They had that touchdown pass to Zay Flowers. But they really offensively, the Chiefs' defense has stymied them essentially a lot of that game. And like I was saying, you were mentioning about them not running the ball. That was their strong suit a lot of this season. And if the Chiefs, you look at the week before against the Bills were able to run the football effectively. The Bills just couldn't finish right at the end. They had that field goal miss, and that was that. The Ravens, to me, their coaching just let them down. I know that Lamar obviously had the interception, but he was playing from behind. In terms of the Ravens, they want to play their game specifically. the Chiefs didn't let them play their game because they essentially were trying to do a lot. They were essentially trying to not play their game. And essentially, that's running the football. And you see specifically, and one of my co-hosts from my other show was kind of talking about it. He was saying something that really stood out to me. He's just like, if your quarterback is your leading rusher in your game, you usually don't win the game. And essentially, you had Gus Edwards. You had some other guys that have been really crucial in the last couple weeks for the Ravens to make plays, especially on the ground game. And they just didn't know touches. It just does not make sense. It really doesn't make sense. The Chiefs had 0 points in the second half. So you would think the Ravens offense, their high-powered attack, they only gave up 17 points, and you told me that they lost that game. I've been pretty surprised because the Ravens been able to score a lot, and they just weren't able to kind of finish the job because they just didn't run the football consistently. So I think it was more the Ravens game to not execute than the Chiefs game to win. Yes, the Chiefs kind of remind me this year of kind of the older Patriots game, of one of the older Patriots dynasty teams where they didn't have a lot of talent, but they're starting to kind of win games in different ways that they might have not used to in the past. The Chiefs, kind of their younger team with Patrick Mahomes, their offensive attack, they were able to, they're pretty much a team that just outscore you on the other end. But now these Chiefs teams now are more of like, we'll kind of, if you want to be a high power team, we'll go that way. If you want to be a low power team, we'll go that way as well. So that's essentially kind of what they did. And the Chiefs made a couple more plays in the second half to win that game, but they kind of let the Ravens kind of hang around for a lot of the game in the second half, and they just did not take advantage. They either had crucial mistakes, obviously Lamar, the interception, and Zay Flowers, obviously, when he fumbled that ball, I knew the game was over. Because I thought that if he got in the end zone, it obviously would have changed that game. But the Ravens did not deserve that win. Just the matter because they just shot themselves in the foot constantly. And that's been a problem with the Ravens in the last couple of playoffs. They just constantly shoot themselves in the foot. I remember last year against the Bengals, they had, I think it was Huntley had that QB sneak, I believe, and the Bengals legitimately ran all the way back because there was a fumble or something like that. It's just like they consistently do this to themselves. And we have to question guys about Lamar Jackson because, yes, he's probably going to be the MVP tomorrow or maybe today now in terms of my area. But this is essentially why you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson has a ton of talent, but as in terms of can he make the talent through the air and in the run consistently, and against a defense like the Chiefs, they did not let him to throw the ball consistently. So there's just a lot of shooting themselves in the foot in terms of the Ravens. You have in terms of a lot to take a look in the offseason, and there's no excuse for them either. Like they had the playmakers and stuff, they just didn't get it done. So, but congrats to the Chiefs on that. The Lions-Niners game, and Isaiah, I know for a fact in terms of your Niners, I obviously credit you guys. You guys got into the Super Bowl, but obviously you're gonna have a little luck coming your way because you look at the Packers-Niners game, right? The Packers had kind of early in that first half. The Niners obviously they had the momentum after the first interception Jordan Love threw, and then the Packers kind of did something else, and then the Niners took advantage. Then you look at this game, the Lions in the first half, the Lions had all the control. And then essentially it came down to blunders constantly from the coach in that third quarter for you guys to even have a chance because essentially the Niners were dead in the water. Their defense essentially kind of played like they did against the Packers in that first half. They had no pass rush. Jared Goff essentially and Laporta and St. Brown and Gibbs, all those guys essentially were able to make plays consistently. But then the second half specifically, when that third quarter came around, I was telling my brother, I said, this is a term, essentially. Do not play with your meat. Essentially, that's kind of a way in terms of don't let essentially do something stupid specifically to maybe get a team life because the Niners essentially were dead in the water. And then Dan Campbell, you're up by 10 points. And go for that fourth down. You don't get it. That ensuing drive, they had an Ayuk catch, obviously, off a potentially interception. That ensuing next drive, they had the fumble. And then essentially pretty much unraveled from there. And if Dan Campbell just kicked the points, and I get it, obviously he's been aggressive a lot in this season. And, obviously works in the regular season. This is the postseason. This is essentially where it matters the most. If you miss the field goal, you miss the field goal. People aren't, missing it. If you go for it and make the fourth down, I still don't like it because then obviously you have your second chance because now you're, like Isaiah, you mentioned, down by 3. and they still didn't go. They still went for it. So it's more of the coaching essentially let the Niners kind of hang around and get them to there. Then you could say, well, Brock Purdy, I know he made some timely throws. He made it. I definitely tip my cap for that. But it was more of the scheme and the coaching that let the Lions down more than the Niners coming back, because essentially the Niners were dead in the water without essentially the miscues that Dan Campbell had. So that's kind of my things that were from there. But congrats to these two teams. When it gets to the Super Bowl, kind of the two teams that usually kind of get there have to be a little lucky. That's kind of what happened. So,
anyways, now that being said, here now we're going to talk about the Super Bowl. Here we're going to start with some prop prediction segments here about who wins the coin toss. Who I think wins the coin toss. I'm going to pick the Niners to win the coin toss, and they defer. What about you guys?
This is tough because it's 50-50, right? I'm going to go with the Niners, and I'm going to go with the defer.
What about you, Ben?
I'm going to go Kansas City. I think they defer.
Over or under 10 times? Will Taylor Swift be shown throughout the game? I'm going to say over 10 times because Taylor Swift is the show of Kansas City football now that she is in love with Travis Kelce. And Taylor Swift brings mojo to those type of games. What about you, Isaiah?
This is tough.
Oh, over under 10 times. I think it's going to be right at 10, actually, because I don't think they'll show – because 10 times is a lot. Like, I don't think they will show her, like, more than 10 times. I think it will be – I'm going to go under. I think it's going to be 9 times that they show her.
What about you, Ben? How many times do you think?
It depends if they win the Super Bowl, because like if they win the Super Bowl, then so many camera angles are just going to be right on her. So, but if they don't, then it's probably going to be just kind of during the game. So I'm going to probably go like a little bit under, like 7 to 8.
And then we talk about who will score the first touchdown of the game. I'm going to say the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's going to be either Purdy handing the ball off to McCaffrey, or I think he's going to throw a touchdown pass to George Kittle.
For me, who scores the first touchdown? I think this is how the game goes. I think Kansas City gets the ball. I'm hoping the Niners will get 3 and out, but I don't think they will. But I think they do force the Chiefs to punt. And I think the Niners will go down the field because I don't trust this Chiefs defense when it comes to the run defense. I think Shanahan will be unlike John Harbaugh and Todd Monken. He will attack Kansas City's weakness, and they're going to run the football right down Kansas City's throat. And then Kansas City's going to zone in on the running game. I think Brock Purdy in the red zone rolls out to his right and fires a dart to – I'm gonna go with George Kittle. George Kittle is due for a big game because he's been really quiet this postseason. So I'm gonna go Purdy to Kittle, touchdown pass, Niners score first.
What about you, Ben? What do you think will be who will score the first touchdown of the game?
I'm gonna go Kansas City. I think that the Niners have been kind of starting slow the last couple weeks, and I'm gonna go Isaiah Pacheco with a touchdown run.
And then you talk about who will turn the ball over first, and it will be a fumble or an interception. I'm going to say it's going to be a fumble because I think Nick Bosa is going to recover the football, and Kansas City is going to turn the ball over, and I think the Niners defense is going to show up this time, show up big in the Super Bowl. What about you, Isaiah?
It's making me want to throw up to say this, but it's going to be my guy Brock Purdy. He's going to turn the football over first. He's going to throw – he's been Ben and Laurel, he's been very lucky this postseason not to have like 5 or 6 interceptions. Like he's been like really dangerous with the football. I think he finally throws one. I'm going to say he throws one on like the Niners' second possession.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think Purdy. He's had his moments of being extremely fortunate, but he's going against Steve Spagnuolo, who – to me, I know him very well, of course. He was the Giants' defensive coordinator against Brady, and he just blitzes constantly. And that Chiefs front, they can get after the quarterback. Guys like Chris Jones, I know that they're going to be missing one of the other guys. But they do a lot of different type of schemes. And for a guy like Purdy, Purdy needs a lot of time in the pocket to make things work. And when he's under pressure, that's essentially a lot of times when he struggles. I know that there's stats out there that he's pretty decent against the blitz, but Spagnuolo just does a lot. And I think that's why the Chiefs are in this specific position is their defense more than their offense. So I'm going to go Chiefs defense gets an interception.
Anyways, now with that being said here, now we got to talk about who will have a bigger game, George Kittle or Travis Kelce. I'm going to say Travis Kelce.
I'm going to say George Kittle. I think the Niners are going to double and triple Kelce because they know outside of Kelce, the Chiefs don't really have a lot of weapons that scare you. Rashid Rice doesn't really scare anybody. Marquise Valdez-Scantling always drops the football. So there's really nobody that really scares you besides Kelce. So you got to take away Kelce. And for the Niners, I know the Chiefs are going to try to take away Debo. They're going to try to take away McCaffrey. Well, then you have Kittle, who's going to leak outside and have a really good game, especially against the Chiefs linebackers, who aren't really that great at covering tight ends. I think that's a great matchup for the Niners to exploit. So give me George Kittle to have a really big game in the Super Bowl.
What about you, Ben?
So I think Kittle's going to find the end zone. But if you're going to talk about yards, I'll probably go Kelce. I feel like they're going to get Kelce a lot of the ball, at intermediate routes or some deep passes. But I think when it comes to the goal line, I think that the Niners goal line will do a good enough job against that Chiefs offense to limit Kelce. But I do think that that Kittle will find the end zone in this one. So those are kind of my two.
I mean, now you got to talk about how many rushing yards for Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Pacheco in the game. I'm going to say both will get over 100 yards just because of how good they run the football. They run it effectively, and I think that we are going to see a really good rushing attack between the two, Isaiah and Ben.
Oh, Ben, you can go first on this.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to get – this is tough because the Chiefs have done a really good job. I mean, last week, obviously, I felt like the Ravens just didn't put their running attack, scheming a lot, but still boggles my mind. But I'd probably go with McCaffrey, probably like 120. I think that he's going to be due for some long runs. He's done really well this postseason with yards after contact. So I think that will tell me that he'll probably break like a 20 to 30-yard run. Pacheco, I think, will also have a decent game. I'd probably say around 75, 80 to me. So I think Pacheco's going to be a little slightly under 100. And then I think that McCaffrey's going to be a little bit over 100.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead, Isaiah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think McCaffrey's going to have a big day because I think the Chiefs' run defense is not that great. The Niners are going to try to exploit the heck out of it. So they're going to run the football heavily in this game. I think McCaffrey goes for 140 yards and a touchdown. And then I think that Pacheco, not so much because the Niners – I think he goes for 70 yards. And then I'll say a touchdown because I think in the red zone, the Chiefs are going to give him the ball and the Niners are going to be zoned in on the passing attack. So give me 140 plus for McCaffrey and 70 for Pacheco.
Do you guys think that will there be any player to have 2 touchdowns rushing or receiving in this game? I'm going to say yes if it's McCaffrey and go ahead, Isaiah.
Yeah, I agree. I think there will be a player with 2 touchdowns. I'm gonna go with McCaffrey because the Chiefs' run defense, it's been well documented. They're not that great. The Niners are gonna try to exploit that weakness, and they're just gonna give McCaffrey the ball and just give him the ball. The Chiefs haven't seen a running back as dominant as Christian McCaffrey this season, and he's a different beast. So they're gonna give him the ball, and I think he's gonna have 2 touchdowns in this game rushing.
Anyways, here now. What about you, Ben?
I don't. I think that both teams are going to use a lot of their playmakers consistently. So I think that it's going to be just a lot of guys that'll have just at least one touchdown each.
And then you talk about passing touchdowns. Who do you think has more between Brock and Patrick Mahomes? I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes because I think that if he gets Rasheen Rice or Travis Kelce going, I really think that he's going to be in for a good day. But don't be shocked if Brock Purdy has more.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously been in a Super Bowl in the past. I kind of know his kind of track record. I mean, Brock Purdy is obviously his first Super Bowl ever. Who knows if he's going to obviously have the jitters in kind of his first game, this big one. I know that the Niners have obviously a really good defense, but Mahomes obviously is doing well in this playoffs with the limited weapons that he has, and he's essentially their offense is a little bit more, in rhythm at least the last couple of weeks than it's maybe had before the postseason. So yeah, I think the Mahomes is probably going to throw two touchdowns, and I think Purdy throws one.
What about you, Isaiah?
I don't want to spoil my pick, but I think that I'm actually going to surprise you guys. I think Brock Purdy has more touchdowns passes because I really think that I already said Pacheco's going to have one. And I think Patrick Mahomes will have two, but Purdy has three because I feel like the Chiefs are going to be very zoned in on the run starting in the beginning, and that's where Purdy's going to have a lot of success. And then they're going to, start to zone in on the passing attack because I think Purdy's going to have a lot more success. And then that's when McCaffrey's going to explode towards the end when they're weary and they're tired. So I'm going to go with Purdy with three and Mahomes with two.
Now we talk about how many sacks will Nick Bosa have? I'm going to say at least 3 to 4. What about you, Isaiah?
If this is where it comes down to, can the Niners defense gets pressure? I'm going to go with one sack against the Chiefs. I think the other guys around him though they'll step up, so I'll go one.
What about you, Ben? How many sacks do you think Nick Bosa will have?
I'm going to go 1.5. I think he's going to be having a lot more in terms of tackles than sacks.
Next up, we'll talk about how many sacks will Chris Jones have. Chris Jones is not really a sacker. He's going to stop the run. What about you, Isaiah?
I think he's going to have one because I think that with, like Ben mentioned earlier, Charles Omenihu, who is one of their better run defenders and their second best defensive lineman, he tore his ACL against the Ravens. He's actually going to be out for that game. So that's a big blow. So they need Chris Jones to step up. And the Niners' weakness on their offensive line is the right side. So I think they line Chris Jones up there. I don't know if those guys on the right side can stop him. So I think he's going to have at least one sack against Brock Purdy.
What about you, Ben? How many sacks do you think Chris Jones will have?
I don't think he's not going to have any. He's been really MIA the last couple of weeks. I think he's going to have a difference, but I don't think that he's going to get a sack. I think it's going to be a lot of the guys around him. He's going to be more of the guy that will kind of help scheme a lot of their blitzes and stuff on Purdy.
And this question is for the both of you. Will there be a missed field goal in the game by either team? If there was, it's going to be Jake Moody that misses a crucial kick.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I think that Jake Moody's going to miss one.
What about you, Isaiah?
I agree. I think it's going to be Moody. He's been, no pun intended. He's been very moody this postseason, and I don't know. He's been he's been very untrustworthy. And if it comes down to, fellas, if this game comes down to Jake Moody lining up for a game-winning field goal, like a 30-yard game-winning field goal or a 40-yard, I'm probably going to close my TV and not even watch because I'm going to be so nerve-wracked up for that because I know he might miss that kick because he's been just so bad under pressure when he's had that opportunity.
Yeah, and what about Ben? Did you say who you think's going to miss a field goal here?
Yeah, I said Moody.
Anyways, now we're going to talk about will there be a 50-plus yard explosive play via the run or through the air? I think it's going to be through the air. If Deebo Samuel catches it, it's going to be a 50-plus yard touchdown.
For me, Christian
go ahead.
McCaffrey, 55-yard touchdown to seal the game. I think that's what is going to happen because the Chiefs are going to be tired. They're going to be weary. And at the end of the games, teams that are ahead like to run the football. And Christian McCaffrey trying to stop him when you're tired, good luck. So I think he's going to have that explosive play that seals it for the Niners.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any 50-plus. I think that both teams are going to try to play conservative on both offenses. But I do think there will be some explosive plays. I think it's going to be more like the 20 to 30-yard range. But I don't think there's going to be anything that's 50-plus. I just think that's still have a number.
What color top shirt will Usher wear for his halftime show performance? I'm going to say black. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Ben.
I don't know. White? I don't know.
I'm gonna say black because I feel like that's what all these teams have been wearing in Vegas for like media day. They've all been wearing like black shirt, black hoodies, and black suits. So I'm gonna go with black.
Anyways, now with that being said here, what color Gatorade will be dosed on the winning coach? I think it's going to be yellow.
I'm gonna go orange.
Give me blue.
All right, next up, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl preview segment. What are the keys to victory for the Kansas City Chiefs? For me, I think it's about Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball 50 times, Travis Kelce getting involved. I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling can't drop the football. I really think that run defense is going to have to keep up with Christian McCaffrey if the defense of the Chiefs wants to get it done. The keys to victory for the 49ers, I think it's going to be all on their offense led by Brock Purdy. I also think that their pass rush is also going to be a big key to their success that day. What about you, Isaiah?
You hit the nail on the head, Loro, and that's exactly what I told James last night. This game, for the 49ers, this game is simple. It comes down to, can they get after Patrick Mahomes? If they can, then they'll win the game, and they'll win it pretty easily. If they can't, the Niners are going to get blown out because you cannot let Patrick Mahomes have 10-plus seconds to throw the football down the field. You just can't. He's the best quarterback in the NFL for a reason. You can't even give him 5 seconds in the pocket to throw the football down the field, or else he will torch you. So for the Niners, it's simple. Pressure the quarterback. If they can pressure Mahomes, then the Niners, I think, will win this game. And then on offense, it's also simple as well. Don't be like Baltimore and run the football. Just run it because Kansas City's defense, the run defense, is ranked 26th in the NFL. They're not really that good. And you have one of the best running backs in the NFL in Christian McCaffrey. Run the football. Just run it and see if Kansas City can stop it, and it'll open up a lot of the play action stuff. So for the Niners, it's run the ball and also pressure Mahomes. And also, Brock Purdy, do not turn the football over. Don't make any crucial mistakes. And then for the Chiefs, it's stop the run because San Francisco is going to try to test your weakness. They're going to try to run the football with Christian McCaffrey. That's what the Niners do. And then also Mahomes have some magical plays because Bosa is bearing down on you, Hargraves is bearing down on you, Armstead's bearing down on you. You're going to have to escape and try to make some magic happen because your receivers, except for Kelce, I don't think we'll be able to create separation against the Niners secondary. So those are the keys for both the Niners and the Chiefs.
What about you, Ben? What are your keys to victory for both teams?
So for the Chiefs, play from ahead. I think that you see with the Niners the last couple of weeks, they've been playing from behind. And I think for both teams, you obviously kind of have to make that statement, especially in the Super Bowl. I know obviously like the first score doesn't always see like, puts the game kind of as specifically the first score kind of as the finishing product. But the first score, I think, just puts the pressure. Like you essentially want to play on your terms. Andy Reid, in terms of game managing, he's a very good game manager. And with the Chiefs specifically, they trust their defense specifically. Yeah, their run defense hasn't been great, but I trust D Spagnuolo, especially in the Super Bowl and especially in the playoffs. He's been there, done that. He's a coach that I think, to me, is going to scheme a lot, specifically to get pressure on Brock Purdy. He's a young quarterback, his first time ever in the Super Bowl, and to not let the playmakers essentially do the job for him, because essentially what Purdy's going to have to try to do, he's going to try to just get it out quick. He's not going to have a lot of time to sit there, to throw it deep, to throw intermediate, because that's what he's essentially going to want to try to do. And they're not going to let it happen. So I think for the Chiefs specifically, they got to get pressure on Brock Purdy. And they just have to play from ahead and to play on their terms. Because if they play ahead, they play from their terms. I really like their chances of winning this game. But if they play from behind, if the Niners, now transition over to the Niners have to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, because we've seen the last couple weeks that if Patrick Mahomes is in the pocket and he essentially is comfortable, even when he's scrambling out. But with Patrick Mahomes, my best guess is you want to force him to throw on both sides. You just can't let him just kind of sit there and then just kind of let him kind of do his work, because that's when it gets very dangerous. So I know I kind of obviously kind of put it in two different types of things, but really to chunk it into each team, the Chiefs, they have to play from ahead, and then two, they got to get pressure on Purdy. For the Niners, they got to get everybody involved offensively. They can't have turnovers like they have in the last couple weeks. They got to play a lot better in the first half, and just execute. Both teams essentially have to execute. And I've told you this, Laura, in the past of the Patriots, when we've done all the shows. What's the one thing specifically every single week I tell you to win a football game? What's the biggest crucial thing for it to happen?
Turnover battle.
Thank you. Have we seen the last couple weeks? The turnover battle, guys, is the biggest thing in football. If you essentially limit turnovers specifically for your team, the chances are greater for your team to win. It's simple. So that's the biggest thing, I think, for both teams. You've got to be able to figure out to limit turnovers. And if there's one team specifically that's going to have the turnovers, I'm trusting specifically Kansas City's defense against a younger quarterback to let that happen over a guy like Patrick Mahomes who's been there, done that, and has a championship pedigree.
Well, we got to also talk about here who will have a bigger game between Patrick Mahomes or Brock Purdy. I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, because I really think he's been there before, and a lot of people have given the Chiefs a lot of crap this season. Maybe the Chiefs could silence them.
You know, if we're talking touchdowns, as I said in the prop bet segment, I was going to go with Purdy just because, you guys know, or pretty much know who I'm picking to win. But in terms of yards, I'd probably go with Mahomes. I think Mahomes will have less turnovers than Purdy, but in terms of touchdowns, I think Purdy has more touchdowns. But I think Mahomes is going to have a great game just because he's going to have to.
He is going to have to. You're right about that. But what about you, Ben? Who's going to have a bigger game between Pat Mahomes and Brock Purdy?
So I'm the opposite of Isaiah. I think that both quarterbacks, I think, will be okay, but I think that I'm trusting Mahomes is championship pedigree in the past, and I think that one of the quarterbacks will have a turnover that would be key specifically. So I think that Mahomes will have more touchdowns, but I do think Purdy's going to have more because he's going to be playing from behind. So he's going to have to be forced to throw the football, and so that's why I have.
Next up here, with that being said, is who do you trust more in this Super Bowl? The D-line of the Niners or the Chiefs O-line? I think I trust more the 49ers defensive line, because Bosa and Armstead, those guys are going to be a game wrecking crew.
You know, when you first look at this question, you might think, what kind of question is this? Because the Niners defensive line, they have Armstead, they have Bosa, they have Hargraves, they have all Chase Young, they have all these great high-priced talents, and the Chiefs offensive line, they're not really known. But the Chiefs offensive line, like you mentioned, Ben, they've really held up nicely the last couple of weeks against the Bills and the Ravens. The Niners defensive line, however, haven't. They haven't gone after the quarterback. Jordan Love and Jared Goff had so much time to throw the football. So it is a valid question. For me, I'm going to go with the Chiefs offensive line, actually. I don't trust the Niners D line right now because they just, over the last month, I don't know, something's gone on with the Niners. They just haven't been able to get after the quarterback. And it's not just in the playoffs against the Commanders. Fellas, the Commanders had the worst offensive line of football. They gave up the most sacks in the NFL this season. And can you believe this? The Niners only had one sack the entire game. And that was when Nick Bosa got Sam Howell down when he was running to try to get back to the line of scrimmage. Like, that wasn't really even a sack. So it's just been very disappointing. And if the Niners don't get after Patrick Mahomes in this game, the Niners are going to lose, plain and simple. So that's what it really comes down to. And you look at the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have, Jawan Taylor has been playing really well. Their offensive line has really done a great job. They're probably going to be missing the former Patriot Joe Thuney.
He actually might play.
Yeah, he might play, but it's not likely, according to Adam Schefter. That is a big blow for them, however, because you can line Hargraves up there, you can line Armstead up there, and they can wreck that side of the offensive line. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs offensive line. I just don't trust the Niners O-line or D-line right now. And until they show me, I just don't trust them, because how can you, against the Packers, the Lions, and even against the Commanders, that's what really alarmed me. How can you only get one sack? Like, that should not happen with how many of these guys, how much money these guys are getting paid.
And did you say, Ben, who you trust more between the Niners D-line and Chiefs O-line?
I haven't. I actually going to go opposite. I know I haven't been highly, great with the Niners, their pressures of late, but you have to take into account, guys, that both teams have an extra week of preparation. So you feel like, kind of with the Super Bowl, that there's kind of be some things that you just didn't expect to happen. I think that the Niners are going to try to get as much pressure as they can. Different stunts, different packages, but it's just going to come down to the ability of Patrick Mahomes. And just, there's just going to be some times you're just like, there's nothing really you can do. So I think the Niners are going to do everything that they can to pressure him. But because I just don't know how the secondary is going to be with the Niners. The Niners secondary to me has been very shaky consistently. So they're going to have to find ways to win, specifically their defense, somehow. And I think it's going to happen with their front. And that's what's going to have to happen, because if they don't, then they're going to be in for a long one.
Anyways, guys, now we talk about the biggest X factor in the Chiefs and Niners that no one is talking about that will help have a massive game to help decide this game. I kind of think that if you look at it, I think it's going to be Trent McDuffie of the Chiefs secondary, because I kind of think he's probably due for a really legendary game. What about you, Isaiah and Ben?
So for me, I'll go first.
Go ahead, Ben.
There you go.
Okay. So I got two. I got one for the Niners and one for the Chiefs. For the Niners, it's Chase Young. You've been called out by the coaching staff for your lack of effort the last couple of weeks, and it's been embarrassing. And you haven't done anything really ever since you got to Santa Clara with the 49ers. And the Niners paid a lot to get you, and you were third or the number 2 pick in the draft. Like, it's time to show that you've got this great talent and actually use your talent to your advantage. And the Chiefs are going to go after Bosa. They're going to zone in on Javon Hargraves and Armstead. Well, it leaves Chase Young as the guy that's going to get the one-on-one matchups. And for him, he has to win that in order for the Niners to pressure Patrick Mahomes. So I think Chase Young has heard all the talk. I know he's heard all the criticism. I know that he's embarrassed by what happened 2 weeks ago against the Detroit Lions. I think Chase Young is going to be the X factor, and he's going to be the guy that needs to have a great game for the Niners in order for them to win. And then for the Chiefs, I'm going to go with Marquise Valdes-Scantling, because the Niners are going to take away Kelsey. They're going to have the retention on Rashee Rice and Pacheco. So it's going to be other guys that are going to have to hurt the Niners. It's going to be MVS. Everybody knows you as the guy that always drops the football, that can't hang on to the football. So it's, you got to turn your reputation around. And this is a guy that has to come up big in the Super Bowl for Kansas City to win.
Absolutely. And then you talk about legacy on the line. Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I think Andy Reid has kind of.
I didn't get mine yet.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, for the Chiefs, I'm going to go with Isaiah Pacheco. I just really love him in this spot specifically because they're going to literally focus on Kelsey a lot, but Pacheco just gives you a balance of both catching the ball and running the ball. And he's just shown the last couple of weeks. I mean, he had a touchdown a couple weeks ago against Baltimore. He had a touchdown against the Dolphins this postseason. So he is a really hot hand all postseason, and I think that he's going to be the X factor for that. For the Niners, give me Brandon Ayuk. I think that Brandon Ayuk, they're going to try to focus a lot on Samuel. They're going to focus a lot on McCaffrey and Kittle. And Ayuk essentially, I mean, he's trying to play for a contract coming up for the long-term future. And no other better place after the way that he played with that catch that I last week than to have a massive Super Bowl, because then you'll start to maybe see some teams that are going to want to have him to pay as a number one potential wide receiver in this league. Defensively for both sides, Chris Jones, he has to step up. He's one of the best playmakers. He has to step up. He has been showing it. And then for the Niners, give me Drake Greenlaw, linebacker, because Kelsey's obviously going to be a massive factor. And, guys like Fred Warner and Greenlaw, they're going to have to really show their money's worth against a guy like Kelsey.
Anyways, guys, we talk about legacy on the line. Andy Reid, I think, has already cemented his legacy, and I think that he will continue to build on his legendary resume here. But for Kyle Shanahan, I mean, this is the third time as the charm for Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he blew a big lead to New England, also blew it against Kansas City, and now he has to face them again. Isaiah, what's at stake here for legacy?
I'm going to say Kyle Shanahan has the most at stake. I know me and James talked about this on our show yesterday. Listen, Andy Reid is a great, great coach. And if he loses the Super Bowl, he will be 2-2. There will be kind of a hit on his legacy, but it won't be as bad as Kyle Shanahan. You have to win this. You've been in the Super Bowl 3. This is your third time in the Super Bowl. You've blown leads, back-to-back Super Bowls. It's time for you to fix that and win it. You have a team now that is stacked. You have a team now that I think is more talented than Kansas City. If Kyle Shanahan wins the Super Bowl, Laurel, nobody can ever doubt Kyle Shanahan as an offensive and quarterback guru again, because this dude did not have a top 5 quarterback. He didn't have a top 5 pick at quarterback. He didn't have a superstar at quarterback. He took the 262 pick, Mr. Irrelevant, to the Super Bowl championship. I mean, nobody can ever doubt Kyle Shanahan as a quarterback guru again. And also, if he wins it, he will be known as one of the top 5 head coaches, top 3 head coaches in the NFL. That's all he's missing. He's missing the Lombardi Trophy, and he's going to be known as Bill Walsh 2.0. So that's how important it is for him to win it. And if he loses, well, he's going to be known as the guy that just can't win the big game. He's going to be one of those coaches that, great offensive mind, but you just can't win the big game. So that's how important it is for Shanahan's legacy. I think Andy Reid's legacy will take a little bit of a hit if he loses, but not as big as Shanahan. So Shanahan has to win this Super Bowl. Everything is on the line for Kyle Shanahan.
Absolutely. So anyways, now Ben has left. Now we'll move on with our show. Super Bowl 58 also features an electric matchup of two the bad ends in the NFL, and Kelsey and George Kittle. Who is the better team right now between Kittle or Kelsey? I think it's George Kittle, because he has surrounded himself with great weapons around the quarterback.
Right now, that's tough. Right now, I probably would go with Kittle, because Travis Kelce has shown signs of declining, and he hasn't really been that great this year. He's been hurt a lot this season. He has slowed down. he doesn't really look like he's in his prime anymore. But he's still a very good tight end. But Kittle, I mean, the guy can still move around. He's a ferocious blocker. He's a really good route runner. He's doing. I know Purdy doesn't really throw it to him a lot, but he has put up some really good numbers this year, and he's still balling at a very high level. So I'm going to go with. I think Kittle has overtaken Kelsey as the best tight end right now in the NFL.
And then you talk about prediction for Super Bowl 58. I'm picking the Niners. I think they win 30-27, and my MVP is Brock Purdy. What about you, Isaac?
Laura, here we go, man. It's prediction time. I can't wait. And Laura, I am going to go with my 49ers to win Super Bowl 58. I think it's going to be a great game, but I got the Niners winning 38-27 over the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Niners start out fast and they just they keep the lead from start to finish. It's going to be a great one. I think Brock Purdy throws for 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think he throws for over 300 yards. I think Patrick Mahomes will also throw for over 300 yards as well. But I also think Mahomes will have a crucial turnover, which will really set the Chiefs back. But this Niners offense is way more talented than the offense that the Chiefs faced back in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. You have Debo, you have Kittle, you have Ayuk. They didn't have McCaffrey in that Super Bowl. They didn't have Ayuk in that Super Bowl. Well, they have them now, and I think the defense, they've been called out all the last couple of weeks. They're going to step up. I think Bosa is going to have a great day. I think Chase Young is going to have a great day, and I think Hargraves is going to have a great day as well. So give me the Niners and Brock Purdy to be cemented as one of the GOATs in the NFL and win the Super Bowl. And I think Brock Purdy wins Super Bowl MVP. I also could see Christian McCaffrey winning Super Bowl MVP, but I'm going to go with Brock Purdy just because the NFL likes the quarterback winning Super Bowl MVP, and I think Brock Purdy wins the first of many Super Bowl MVPs in his career. So I'm going to go with the Niners, and they finally break through for the first time in 30 years and get their revenge.
Well, let's talk about, to end this here, our top 5 favorite foods at a Super Bowl party. Number 1 for me, you got to love pepperoni pizza, because having pizza at a Super Bowl party is always fun.
Laura, if you could go down the list from 1 through 5 before I go.
Okay, and then that's my number 1. My number 2 is Lay's barbecue chips. I always enjoy getting that for the Super Bowl, and I think it's going to be a really I think it's always good to have those along with you. And then number 3 for me, I also like, aside from the barbecue chips and the pizza, I also like hot dogs. I mean, sometimes my parents make hot dogs for the Super Bowl or baseball. And then 4 for me is a hamburger. I mean, having a hamburger is nothing wrong with that. And then to round out my top 5, you got to love those fries from In-N-Out.
I like your list, Laurel. I really do. And by the way, Ben, thank you so much for watching the show. Would really like to hear in the comment section what you have to think about our topic that you missed when you left about who has the most at stake between Shanahan and Andy Reid. Who needs this game more for their legacy? But in terms of my top 5 foods for the Super Bowl party, I'm going to go – ooh, this is tough. I'm going to go number 1. You know, you got to have the barbecue Lay's chips. They're so, so good, and they go so well with football. You have to have that. Number 2, it's got to be the pizza, man. Pepperoni, cheese, whatever. You got to have pizza at the Super Bowl party. Number 3 would be the chili. I mean, I love chili. Love putting it with rice and a hot dog or on a hot dog. Like, it's very good. You have to have that. Number 4, ooh, I like the salami and cheese platter. You know, the salami and cheese platter. It's like a little appetizer before the big game. And then number 5 on my list, barbecue chicken wings. You got to have that. those are so good to go with the pizza and the chili, man, and even the hot dogs as well. Man, it's that just makes it what a great Super Bowl party. So I can't wait to have it at my Super Bowl party on Sunday.
Absolutely. But for final thoughts, I mean, it's going to be a great game between the Chiefs and the Niners. And then we will also wrap up the NFL season next week around whenever our schedules will allow it. And then we'll also get ready for baseball season. And we also have a trade deadline tomorrow. I know that you wanted to get that off your chest. I have a really – I don't think the Lakers are going to trade for Zach LaVine now since he's out for the remainder of the season with a foot injury. But maybe they're going to be aggressive.
Well, Loro, it was a great show. Looking forward to a great game on Sunday. Niners and Chiefs, can't wait for it. My final thoughts is, man, I can't wait for the game. NBA trade deadline is tomorrow. I think the Lakers get DeJounte Murray. They've been talking on and off with the Hawks. There's just too much smoke right there. D'Angelo Russell was great. He's playing great basketball right now, but the problem with him is he's inconsistent, and does he show up for the postseason is the biggest question with him. So I don't know. I know DeJounte Murray, however, would show up for the postseason, and DeJounte Murray, I think, would make the Lakers championship contenders. And I think the Lakers also get Andre Drummond as well tomorrow, so can't wait to see what trades unfold. Also for, some other trades that I'm going to throw out there, I think Oklahoma City trades for PJ Tucker. I think they need a wing defender. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. And then another trade I will see is I think the Bulls trade Alex Caruso to the Boston Celtics. I think the Bulls have a sell-off tomorrow besides Zach LaVine. So those are my trade deadline predictions. And I think DeMar DeRozan, a lot of people aren't talking about this, but I think he's going to be on the move because he's a free agent after the season, and the Bulls don't have a shot at winning a championship this season. So they have to sell, and they have to get something back for DeMar DeRozan. So I think he definitely is on the move tomorrow. But yeah, it was a great show. Thank you to Ben for staying up late and, watching the show later on. Thanks to all of our viewers for tuning in. It's going to be a great game. And Loro, you were right. I can't wait to, after the game, we're going to recap the Super Bowl and, recap the NFL season next week, or in 2 weeks. We'll see when our schedule aligns. And how about, Loro, baseball starts next week. It starts next week. Spring training begins, man. And we're probably going to have a baseball preview show coming up very, very soon.
Anyways, folks, for Isaiah, Loro signing off for now, and we will leave you with this.
Third and 29. Jones steps up, tries to avoid it, buys some time. Jones uncorks, deep ball, touchdown on the ricochet. Purdy back to throw, pressure coming, steps away, looking to run, and he walks it in for the touchdown. Throw on 4th and 18. He's given time. He wants Jefferson. Jacobs with running room right up the middle. Jacobs is on his way. The Raiders are going to win this game. Lays it up. Intercepted Trayvon Diggs. Guess who? On a 2, McCaffrey right up the middle, and it's stiff arm, McCaffrey for 6.